Okay guys, in this quick lesson we'll be taking a look at the color jitter shader. So let me just go to my shader network editor, and under the color node we have this color jitter. So let me drag it to my work area, and because this is the first node, as you can see, it will be connected automatically to the Arnold Beauty. Now the color jitter shader enables you to alter the input color by applying a random color variation based on object names, polygons, user data, and procedurals. And you can use this gain, hue, and saturation values to define the range of a random value to be added. Now in this scene, as you can see, I have a bunch of dynamic cubes. As you can see, this is the cloner that contains this cube, and we have some dynamic simulation already cached and baked. So you can bake it on your own, or just go through your timeline if you wanted to see the simulation. Now let's say I have this dynamic simulation and I want to add a random color to these cubes. So in order to do that, we can simply use a color jitter node. So let me apply the shader network that contains the color jitter node to the cloner. And let me just open it up, and let's search for a standard surface shader. Connect the standard surface shader to the Arnold Beauty, and now use the color jitter as the base color input. Now at the time being, the input color, as you can see, is white, and this white color or any other color that I use it here will be used as the base color for our standard surface shader. And because all of our gain, hue, and saturation values are set to 0, therefore we're going to get the exact same color. Now as you can see, we have different sets of gain, hue, and saturation parameters, and in this case, because we are dealing with individual objects, we are gonna need to actually adjust the gain, hue, and saturation values under the object dropdown. So let's see, I'm gonna use maybe a color like this, okay? And now in the color jitter shader, I can use this gain, hue, and saturation values to introduce randomness. So let's say I want to randomize the hue around this input color here. So I can say 0.1 and -0.1. Now we have randomized our color based and around this input value. Or we can add more randomization. Let's say 0.3 on the positive side, and let's say 0 on the negative side, or we can just increase the positive value if we wanted to, right? So as you can see, we can simply add different hue values. We can do the exact same thing for saturation. So let's say -0.3 and let's say 0.3. Now as you can see, we get different saturations on our cubes. We obviously can adjust the seed, so we get different variations if we are not happy with what we see. Let me just zero out the saturation and zero out the seed, and probably set the hue to something like 0.4 here, or 0.5, 0.6. This is about the color jitter in its object mode. Now let me just go ahead and actually hide these cubes, and I have this other cube geometry, and if I change my display, you can see we have a bunch of faces and polygons on this cube. And if let me just apply the same shader and actually run the IPR again and open up the network and go to my color jitter again. Now what we want to do is to add random colors to the different polygons on these cubes. So what I can do is to go to my color jitter. In this case, you can see even though we have this hue max on our object, because we are dealing with and we want to randomize faces and we only have one object, these values do not affect anything. But if I increase my, let's say, hue max to something like 1, now as you can see we get randomized color. And if I try something a bit more subtle, maybe negative 0.2 as well, so as you can see we get this randomized colors on each faces. And if I go to something maybe like 0.5, and now as you can see how beautiful and easy it is to add randomized color to your objects and faces using the color jitter node. So as you can see we have the ability to do the same thing based on the procedurals and the user data. So that's totally up to you. We talk about these procedurals and user data later on in this course, but for now the most important one are the object and the face parameters that we learn how to use them. So that's about color jitter and how to use it to add randomization to your objects and polygons in Arnold for Cinema 4D. See you in the next lesson.